I'm going to have to apologize. I have to hold my mic because I don't have one of the fancy stands, and I'm not going to get one of those unless I'm actually successful. My hair seems to be very happy today. But other than that, this script is based off my personal experience. So your experience, if you have gone to college, you may agree with it, you may not. But the theme for this is college a scam? So I'm not going to lean heavily on the statistics of this discussion, but speak from my own experience in higher education. I went to college twice. Once after leaving the Air Force. I was in the Air Force for maybe a year. That is a story for another time, but I was in the Air Force for maybe a year. I got out during the force reduction cut downs. And then I went to community college for system administrator for databases. I wanted to work in hospitals, managing the database between the MRI machine and the computer itself. And that was considered my most real college experience. Later on, I went on to a hybrid college sponsored by the military that does in-person, hybrid, and completely online classes. This was after I served in the Army for about 7 years. And so I graduated with a bachelor's in psychology, and I have a certificate in clinical mental health. Now, I do want to touch on the certificate side of things. So they apparently have gotten rid of minors, at least in the college that I went to, and they replaced them with certificates. I kind of like this, and I kind of don't. And here's why. I think that my certificate is basically saying, oh, he took these sets of psychology classes. This is going to set him up for clinical health psychology, right? So it's not like I went out and I got anything extra. It's just basically saying, okay, my bachelor's in psychology could be in anything that's psychology related. And it could be in things that people don't consider scientific. My certificate in clinical mental health is just saying, okay, he took the most scientifically based classes out of psychology. So it's like a give and take. I don't know. I wish I could have just minored in into like the medical category, because I had already done biology, which everyone's required to do, but I also did a couple of other classes. But the reason why I wish it was the reason why I wish it was the minor still is because the minors would open you up to being able to take more classes in a separate field. But anyways, that's my spiel on the experience side of things. Went to a junior college, then I went to a university, and I experienced both the full spectrum, bachelor's in psychology, certificate in clinical mental health. Let's move on. With that being said, let's obviously start with the good side of college. Obviously, for the STEM fields, it's good, right? And the reason why is if we went back to like the trade school style where you did an internship, because back in the day you worked under doctors, as far as from what I understand from history, is you went to doctors and you practice under them, and practicing under them allowed you to kind of make your name, have your accreditation. But it also has this whole good old boys club thing where obviously if you were a good doctor, you could have people pay you. You could set it up to where, no one would be able to really make it in the field, and you're kind of the gate guardian. I think that college has provided a way to minimize this issue. And I say minimize it because obviously you have schools like Harvard, you have all these critically acclaimed schools, critically accredited schools. I don't know the correct terminology for it, but you have that, right? And so you still technically have the good old boys club, but it's just less severe because the knowledge should be accessible to any school. All right, moving off of that, when when you graduate from college, since colleges have to have like a critical baseline for us to be tested on and stuff like that, all of the curriculum in the US, and I'm pretty sure around most of the world, has been set up to where it meets like a baseline for what you should know and what you should be tested on. And the reason why this is good is that when you're applying for a job, whether it's in the United States or outside of it, at least this is giving you like a baseline saying, or your employer can infer that you have this baseline knowledge. And so they don't have to worry about training you in certain things. So I guess you could say graduating college means you've proven you have a base level knowledge that your employer can use, and it streamlined the training process. And then lastly, for one of the most obvious reasons, colleges allow students to access specialized equipment and access very environments that would be impracticable with other models of schooling that I just mentioned. And if you were smart about college, you could get a really good education while also not getting that much debt. I think before I move into the bad stuff, I want to touch on more of the specialized stuff. So obviously, if you're looking at becoming like a nuclear engineer or anything like that, a doctor, mathematician, physics, anything to do with like inventing stuff, obviously that's going to be your bread and butter to go to the school. But I don't see the worth when it comes to like business degrees. And I'm going to harp on business degrees a lot in this because I just don't understand them. It's not that maybe they're not good. Maybe they are helping people, but the college that I went to, there were so many people in like business, and it seemed that most of the required classes were math, science, a little bit, but mostly writing and speaking. And you could really learn that on your own. But anyways, let's go back. Let's refocus on what I was saying. So it gives you access to facilities, and if you're smart about it, you can avoid debt. But the thing is everyone's put such a heavy weight on the name of a school. Like, oh, I went to so-and-so, and this means that I'm this elite level. And I don't think that's so anymore. And I don't think people are buying into that, which is good. Oh, sorry. I have no practice at this. So these videos are probably going to be awful to look back on. Now let's go to the bad side. So the bad side has a lot to do with what's been happening recently with politics. And I hate that I have to touch on this. I absolutely hate politics. I hate that it seems to have a place in schools. And I kind of understand why it does. And I just don't think it's necessary for a lot of stuff. But I can only speak on American schools because, it's the only college that I've been to. I'm going to go to a Japanese college to become a physical therapist. So maybe I'll revisit this video at that and see how it goes. But my school had a fair amount of politics. And even in biology classes, some of the textbooks tried to push various political ideologies. We can infer what those political ideologies were. And if you weren't paying attention, you could be swayed by their reasoning. And what I'm saying is my child development book tried to push the issue, right? I'm trying to stay away from this because I don't want to be killed by the algorithm. And I know I'll touch on that later as to how that's kind of a wimpy take, but it tried to push on certain ideologies. But when it came to presenting the research, because every concept in my psychology books, every term usually had like a referenced research article you could go look up and you could read about, right? But when it pushed certain political ideologies, it didn't have those references. And I think it's because it's just not ideologically supported. Now, the funny thing is in psychology, we understand group dynamics and persuasion. And I think when you're going to college, you're at a very interesting developmental time in your life where you do want to be easily swayed. You do want to fit in, and you won't have to look for the research articles and stuff like that. And I had the good graces to go to college when I was older. So it's different. But so child politics in college was intense. So, and it wasn't just child development, it was even in like the development of technology over history, where they were saying like certain technologies, oh, this was actually pushes up glasses. This actually seems that it came from a trans person in early history and stuff like that. And I was like, do you like have legitimate proof of this? And my professor was like, no. And I didn't push the issue because I didn't want it to affect my grades. So I know that's not great. But anyways, moving on. So politics in college is awful, and it's mostly left leaning. I have never had a right wing professor, and I wouldn't really consider them right wing. I would consider them just a realist. They didn't have all the things that are typically I would consider right wing, which is, kind of, I don't want to alienate anybody, but they were just like normal people. And just because they were normal, they would be considered right wing. So my professors that were that way, they were quiet. And then when I'd meet them outside of class, right, like say we were going home on the train, because I went to a university here in Japan that's, English. Oh, sorry, hold on. When I went to a university here and we were on the train going back to wherever home we had, it was kind of like a forbidden, I want to say relationship, but like you looked at somebody and you knew from the way they looked at you, were like, can you talk about this? Oh yeah, you can talk about this. I felt like it was legitimately, I've read 1984. I've read George Orwell's 1984. I've listened to it on Audible, and it felt like those moments where you just couldn't speak about it at first and you had to be sure. Obviously in 1984, the person they confided in betrayed them, and he was a government operative, but this is a teacher, so it wasn't that way. So it's very jarring for me, because when I was a child, college was promoted as you have to go to college to have success. You have to do this, that, and the other to be successful in life. And it's all through college, right? That was one. The other one was that, college was diverse. You go there, you'll learn a lot of things. You'll meet people with differing perspectives and all that. And it wasn't so. My college experience, like, I met more professors with diverse experiences or thought processes that just were towing the line and couldn't talk about it. But the student populace was not diverse in thought, like, at all. I could not find a single person who wasn't just like super, I hate America. And don't get me wrong, like, America's not great, but that's besides the point. You get what I'm saying? Is there was no diverse thought here. And if you did have a diverse opinion that went against the narrative, not even against the research, but against the narrative that the school wanted you to take away from it, you were going to receive a bad grade. And we're going to touch on that in just a second. So I know we just talked about ideals, and I know here's where I'm trying to get to is I know what you're thinking. Pax, why didn't you stick up for yourself? Why didn't you express your views? You're a coward. You could have done this, but you're right, but it would have come at the expense of my grade. And I graduated with a 3.8 GPA, a 3.8 GPA. And imagine if I had spoken out, right? The few times I did, I got destroyed on the assignment. Now you could say, oh, maybe you poorly wrote something. Oh, maybe you didn't include the references. Maybe your APA was off. Maybe your Chicago was off. And it wasn't. It was checked by other professors, and I did have an experiment a little bit. I said, all right, Professor so-and-so, you and I, we share the same views. This teacher doesn't. I'm going to try and provide my perspective. I'm going to give you the paper that I did share the same views with this professor on, and I'm going to give you the paper that I didn't share the same views with the professor on. And I want you to see if there's more grammatical errors in the ones that didn't express the views of the professor versus the one that did, right? I set up an own experiment. And the ones that were against the professor's view at the time, right, had cited references, they had correct key terms, they had correct studies that had been peer reviewed, that didn't have any special interests you could find and stuff like that, and they received a lower grade. So if I had done this and refused to play the game, other people, the other students around me would have gotten a better grade just for agreeing with the views. I'm not going to disadvantage myself for this small battle. I have lived by a philosophy that of Sun Tzu style, and I'm not being like, I don't know what the word is here, but Sun Tzu's style of thinking, right? Know what battles you can win, right? So I'm not just going to go out there and be like, oh, well, you're wrong and everything like this. Knowing how to pick your battles guarantees your survival in this life. We're not, throwing stones at each other anymore. Our ability to live and make it through the evolutionary process, right, is to be able to pass off as everyone else, right? In the end of the day, even if I spout my ideologies, I get a lower grade. I get less access to other things because of my lower grade. The people who might not have even believed in the same stuff as the teacher are now getting more advantages than I am. And I disadvantaged myself because I spoke out. So that's why I didn't speak out. Not because I didn't want to or stuff like that. It's because I just legitimately didn't think it was worth risking my own career, my own life and everything just to, appease my own ideology or to make this point that I could have with a study. So there's that. There you go. Now the last two portions are things that I talked about before, and that's most successful people. I think from my research, most successful people haven't gone to college. Like we always hear like Bill Gates, and I don't think Elon Musk went to college. Maybe they went to a little bit of college, but I don't think it's necessary for you to go to college to be successful in life. And I mean really successful. I'm not saying passable, but be like a millionaire. I don't think that's so. And YouTube proves it just by people going out there. Some people make videos and they haven't even gone to like a marketing class or a video editing class or any of this stuff, and they just blow up. It's because they have an intuition. They figure out their audience. They've done it, and they were successful in it. Gotta hurry this up. I'm taking too long. But there's a lot of topics on people who didn't go to college and how successful they were. So I advise you to look them up on YouTube or look at the statistics. There's plenty out there. Aside from all of the ideologies, I want to touch on the STEM fields again. Equalizing the playing fields, allowing access to advanced facilities, good training, etc. There's a reason why those courses might be more expensive. Oh, here it is. The cost of college is ridiculous. But one of the things that I want to touch on is the viral video gender studies videos. And obviously that's an easy point to pick. It's like, oh, well, obviously this is not a real degree. It's not. I don't care what people say. It's not a real degree. Gender studies is not a real degree. There's other things in biology or psychology or sociology that you could pick, but the theories and all that stuff that you see, that's not real. It shouldn't be allowed. And these colleges are taking advantage of students and allowing them to get these degrees and charging them an arm and a leg for no reason. For no reason at all. They're allowing them to charge an arm and a leg, and that's why everyone's in debt right now. After that, let's head back to the business degrees. We need to trim the fat off of all of these degrees and really figure out what is absolutely necessary for the career of study. And the reason why I say that is because in Japan, the degree paths are 2 years shorter than the US. And I think that the reason why that is they removed all of the ridiculous elective classes that you really don't need. And some schools, it could be from 30 to 45 elective credit hours that you need. Now, if you remove 30 to 45 5 elective credit hours from your coursework and you just do it on the field of study itself, you can graduate 2 years earlier than you are now. So what is the point of elective hours? Is it really for you to taste everything? I don't think so. I think it's a way to get you to buy stuff from the school and be more in debt. So we need to get rid of worthless degrees, and we need to trim the fat off of things in like business degrees and give them the only essential degrees and stuff like that. And with all of that being said, my true feeling is do not go to college. Unless there's an absolutely good reason for you to do so, don't go. The reason why I went is because I wanted to become a doctor here in Japan, and I found out that you could possibly do a pre-med program, and pre-med could be in biology, psychology, and if I remember right, there's physics in there. I'm not sure. Don't quote me. It goes by state. But unless you have an absolutely good reason to do so, don't go. There's plenty of other routes, and in the age of the internet and AI, there's so many ways to research these routes that you can take, even if you don't have a counselor available. So after that, for reasons I outlined, if we can stop giving money to colleges for every degree we can think of, hopefully they collapse. I want the colleges to collapse in on themselves like a dying star. I want colleges to be few and far between, and I want the community college to get more credit and more recognition that they're cheaper and they can give you a foot in the door for any degree you might be considering before going to an actual university. So if we let the colleges collapse and we take all the reasons that I've made, right, and they become more hyper-focused, they become more worthwhile, you'll see the value of higher education skyrocket again, where bachelors will mean something again, where masters will mean something again. Now you can get a bachelor's and a master's in pretty much anything. You can get a PhD in pretty much anything, and you'll be swimming in debt. You won't be able to use it at the job that you're working at. And what is it good for at that point? Anyways, I know this video was all over the place. I went off the tangent on some of the script and stuff like that, but really wanted to speak from the heart. I'm really grateful for my chance at higher education. I believe I'm the first of my siblings to do it. My mom was the first in our family to graduate from college. She holds 2 bachelors, one in MRI and another in X-ray technician. Radiology fields, I don't know. She's probably going to kill me for saying something like that. But, yeah, don't go unless you have to. And college right now I consider as a scam, and they need to remove the politics. They need to streamline things and all that stuff. With that being said, finally, we'll bring it close to the video. I hope you learned something from this. I hope if you're considering to go to college that you really look at this and think if it's worth it or not. It's not a place to go party. You can do that later somewhere else. Just get done with it and move on with your life. And we'll see you in the next video. Next one's going to be about social psychology and persuasion. So looking forward to that. Bye.